Hey folks, everything new under the sun. I wasn't going to put a video tonight, but this SVP, Silicon Valley Bank thing, contagion, it does seem to be spreading. There's more and more news about it. I'm of two opinions. If mainstream media gets on board and starts making a big fuss about it, it could mean that they are saying, okay, this is the time, this is the collapse time. You know, basically the message is we're ready to go for economic collapse, and let's get everybody frenzied and go into the bank and trigger that bank run. The other thought is, as it relates to World War III, maybe they're just going to keep it all secret until it does go down, and that may be what's happening as well. You're looking at usdebtclock.org. Now, this is the current debt, estimated, of course, from this website, $31 trillion in U.S. National debt. That is a huge amount. The interesting thing about this page, and ultimately at some point, the people that we owe the debt to are going to come calling. They're going to come knocking. So that's China, Russia, many countries. Saudi Arabia owns a lot of U.S. dollars. Many countries own a lot of U.S. Debt. And they're going to say, you know what, at some point we want our money. We don't want to hold this debt because this debt is not worth it anymore. It's worth less. If you keep printing it out of thin air, that means every debt that we own, quote unquote, is worth less and less. So you're basically devaluing all of our holdings, China, Saudi Arabia. The U.S. is devaluing all of the holdings of these countries that they're holding U.S. Currencies for and debt generally. So they're not going to like that. So they're going to say, you know what, that's it, United States, we've had enough. And this keeps growing and growing. So how big can it get? Now, this is interesting. There's a debt clock machine. So in 2008, of course, we had the big financial crisis. And that's when the banks came out and the government bailed them out. You remember the too big to fail. The too big to fail banks. So in 2008, so 31 trillion right now in 2023. What was it in 2008? Let's go back there and have a look at it. It was just under $10 trillion, $9.8 trillion in 2008. Go back to 1980. It was less than $1 trillion in debt. From 1980 until now, they've increased the debt $30 trillion. If that's not hockey stick, if that's not exponential increase, basically starting in debt, I don't know what is. Now, you can also go into the future and see what will it be in 2027. Well, let's have a look. The guesstimate for 2027 is $44 trillion, and that probably assumes there's no world wars, there's no not another pandemic where they had to print a whole pile of money out of the thin air just to keep people afloat. It's absolutely incredible. So go to usdebtclock.org and you can look at some of these numbers. But again, the current debt sitting somewhere around $31 trillion. In 2008, the government bailed out the too big to fail banks. Now, as it relates to Silicon Valley Bank, Yellen is saying they're not going to bail them out anymore. Yellen says government will help Silicon Valley Bank depositors, but no bailout, as was done in 2008. FDIC hope talk of special vehicles prevents more bank runs. So the government is on board here. The government is starting to plan for what they see is possibly a systemic issue. The quote here is, "Let me be clear, during the financial crisis, there were investors and owners of systemic large banks that were bailed out by the government. And the reforms that have been put in place means we are not going to do that again." But you know what? That's what Yellen said, and the writer says, oh, but you will. And I agree. When it comes down to it, if they have to, if they think it's going to work, if the economy is on the edge of collapsing, they're going to do whatever they can to keep it from collapsing. And they're going to try what they tried last time. They're going to bail out the big banks. She's saying that because she doesn't want the markets to think that they're ready to do it. And also that would obviously devalue the dollar even more. So that would tank it. But everybody who is in the market should realize that this is really inevitable if this contagion grows at all. It says it wasn't clear which depositors she meant, as we first pointed out Friday. Silicon Bank's 173 billion of customers' deposits at the end of 2022, 152 billion of that 177 billion were uninsured. Only 4.8 billion were fully insured. So again, pulling out the FDIC in this case, I think is potential cause to raise eyebrows and potentially cause panic amongst people, because it's a very visible, overt time period where now the federal government is coming in and literally buying up, propping up these institutions that are in trouble. And so you need to be aware of this and consider that other people may panic given that indication. And the fact that this is the second largest bank, as I understand, since Lehman Brothers in U.S. history to collapse. And you talk about the credit default swap and this idea that banks all kind of back up each other. So if one goes down, the rest of the banks hold the pot for that and bail out that bank. But if they, all start having trouble, it's going to be a domino effect, and they're all going to start going down very quickly. This is from Zero Hedge. Never seen in 40 years, collapse of Silicon Valley Bank sparks bank runs as people wait in lines. That's reminiscent of 1929, isn't it? And I would suggest to you that, go watch videos about 1929. Go watch It's a Wonderful Life, which is a perfect example of how bank runs happen when people panic. And rightly so in some cases. You have your life savings of cash in a bank, and you want to hold on to that if there's any talk of it going down. So you can't blame people for panicking. But at the same time, when people do panic, these banks don't hold enough cash. Now, it used to be back in the day, they were required to hold 100% of their value, the wealth or the backing of that dollar in their vault. So if they had $10 worth of fiat currency, they would need $10 worth of gold in their vault, or $100 or $1,000. That amount that you had to have in your vault by law to back up the fake currency, the pieces of paper that you were giving out to people to say, we have your money, that got smaller and smaller until we get to the fractional reserve banking system, where you're only required to have a very small fractional percentage of the amount of money that you have given out in cash. Basically, it means that all the cash in the banks, most of it is not backed by anything. And how do we know that? Well, it's this idea that even though there was 173 billion customer deposits, only 152 billion were insured. And that's kind of the idea of it. There's 152 billion were uninsured. And so you have this small fractional amount that was insured, and that's really the same way it is with the backing of the currency as well. There's not much backing it. The U.S. has sold a lot of its gold, and the gold it has does not cover the trillions of dollars of national debt. They don't hold enough gold to back up this. This is all pie-in-the-sky money that they will never repay. And when the countries who hold this debt realize that they will never repay it, that's when you go to World War III. Now, your favorite mainstream media economic channel, CNBC, the futures are up right now, but obviously people are in trouble, and I think there is some manipulation of this as well. Big whales get in there and buy up this, but I think as soon as the market's open, you'll see this flop down again, and the crash group that deals with the drops in the stock market, the plunge protection team, they'll need to get in there and do something about it. Regulators unveil plan to assure depositors will get money after Silicon Bank collapse. Second biggest bank failure in U.S. history happened in 48 hours. That's how fast. That's the headline on CNBC. 48 hours it took for the second biggest bank failure in U.S. history. Now, it didn't all happen in 48 hours. It's just that the news cycle took about 48 hours to get this out. The CEO of this bank. He was doing deals to sell shares, at the end of February. Employees, there were probably many employees who knew about it, and I read an article where they even gave out bonuses just prior to this collapse. So they know about it. It's just the news cycle and us that think this is all of a sudden. This stuff takes a long time to develop. This doesn't just all of a sudden fail. But there are planned failures and soft failures, if you will. Silicon Valley Bank, latest developments, gold jumps. So again, this idea that if you don't hold it, you don't own it, is a very good metaphor to understand, and a good reason why you should have hard assets. Now, it was Southern Prepper 1 who suggested that treat this like a SHTF trigger event, where this could trigger economic collapse and bank runs tomorrow morning. Remember, on Friday they said, hey, everybody, every depositor to Silicon Valley Bank, look, we're closing shop right now. We're gonna correct stuff. We're gonna get some people in here to manage the bank. Come back Monday, and you'll get a portion of your deposits by way of the FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. And so just like in economic collapse, when they want to switch over to a new currency, they're going to close everything down on a Friday night and say, look, come back Monday, everything is going to be awesome. And when you come back, you're going to get pennies on the dollar, or there's going to be a new digital currency or something like that. But he suggested to treat it like an SHTF moment. So just like a tornado, a hurricane, or the local news is saying a storm is coming, you should get your car filled up with gas. You should fill up your jerry cans. You should top off your preps, get some extra water, and maybe fill up a bathtub like you would do if there's a power outage coming. Get some extra food, get some extra cash out, because you never know. A storm could hit you, a hurricane, and it could take out power, and which means if there's no power, there's probably no Interac machines, no credit cards, and so you may need some cash. Cash is going to work for the first couple of days of economic collapse until it starts hyperinflating. But it will work for a period in time until it's totally worthless and you're taking a wheelbarrow fulls to buy a loaf of bread. At that point, you need to switch over to probably eggs, literally bacon, and other tradable, barterable items in absolute economic collapse. So futures have opened for trading sharply higher, with Bitcoin precious metals also spiking amid rising expectations. So some people are moving into Bitcoin, cryptos. Again, I have cryptos. I wouldn't necessarily suggest to go there. I still like hard assets and gold and silver. Just like in jail, where cigarettes are a currency, something tradable. You need something that people want. Even if you don't smoke in jail, you held cigarettes very valuable because you would get your allotment. And they did this in the army in World War II and the World Wars and as well, where they would get a certain allotment of cigarettes, each of them would. So if you didn't smoke, you could actually save those up and trade them to your buddies for, an extra food rations or some other thing when they didn't have money to trade. So you got to look at these things and say, you know what, I don't necessarily drink, or I don't necessarily drink alcohol or smoke cigarettes, but maybe I know people that do and might find that very valuable when stuff hits the fan. And so keep some of that back, and you may find it comes in valuable when cash is no longer, or you have run out of your cash, and you say to your neighbor, look, I've got this, will you trade me this for that, and you can come to some deal. So the whole barter society will pop up. It will always pop up. The thing is, when they go to a digital currency, as I have in my timeline of the Return of the Lord, this idea of the mark of the beast come down, they're going to really limit a lot of that. They're going to really discourage bartering. Why? Because anybody who does barter will get a lower credit score and may have their bank account shut off via this digital currency. So if they find out that you're bartering with your neighbors, they may shut you off, and so they're not going to want to do that. Your neighbors won't, who are playing ball, with the system, because they may not be able to, pay for their car lease or pay their mortgage because they'll be locked out of the economic system. So there's going to be strong coercion not to deal with anybody via barter. So it's going to be interesting times. A lot of people think it's going to go to that. You know, a lot of preppers think, you know what, it's going to be awesome. We're just going to all barter and everything will be great. But no, the government's going to put in rules that is really going to discourage that and actually criminalize it and put people in really hard positions where they won't be able to. They're not going to want to go along and barter something when they know that the government could shut them off, and it means whether they're going to feed their family or not feed their family. So people are going to start shutting you down and saying, no, I'm not going to barter. Sorry, it's against the law now. Or what I would do would get me a strike on my credit score. And then on top of that, there may be incentive by governments to report you. They're going to say, look, if you hear or see of somebody working outside the new digital currency system, report them to the police because they're probably doing something illegal. And so your friends, your family, your neighbors will start reporting you if you're trying to ask them about bartering and such and trying to stay outside the economic system. Remember, look at the pressure that the government put on people during the pandemic. It's going to be that times 10 when the mark of the beast and the economic system comes in and the World Bank digital currency comes into play. They're going to push everybody over there, and if you don't take it, it's going to be very, very hard for you. You may be starving. You may not be able to pay for a house. You may be out of a house. You may be on the street because you literally would be not invited or included or allowed to be within the economic system unless you had that mark in your right hand or your forehead. So, folks, things are going down. It could be going down tomorrow. Nobody knows. I said at the beginning I said it on the community post that 1929 happened. World economies and fiat currencies, world reserve currencies have switched over the years, and these are inevitable, and nobody knows when it's going to go down. So, could they kick the can tomorrow? They could. It's likely that they will kick the can further down the road, a little bit farther, a little bit farther. How long can they go? I don't know, but you need to treat every day like it's your last. That's why you need to know the Lord Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior now. You need to let others know about Jesus now, because this could be their last day. It could be your last day to tell them about it. It could be the last day of civil society as we know it, or the United States as we know it, or Canada as we know it. We don't know when we're going to World War III. We don't know when the economy is going to collapse, and it has in the past. It always happens. It may not happen for many years, but it always ultimately happens. And we are living through those times right now where the crunch time is coming, and we're about to go off a cliff. I'll leave it there, guys. Be prepared. Monday's going to be a very, very interesting day to see how this falls out. Will everybody panic? Probably not, but you need to be prepared as if it could occur. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.